Yo, 2012 Chrysler 200. The victim is complaining about the ABS going off at slow speeds, and the brakes are horrible. They don't like to work very well. Yeah, that looks like a little procrastination going on. Front brake pad is down to about nothing. This front brake rotor is pretty ugly. Kind of hard to decide which one of the other three look better. I'm not screwing around trying to diagnose an ABS problem with brakes like this. Brake fluid looks quite fancy. I'm sure that's original. First thing I'm going to do is check these rear calipers and see if they feel like working as good as they're supposed to. I'm going to pull this plug here. Try to open this bleeder screw up with an 8mm. Hopefully it don't break. I got a little brake bleeder bottle I'm going to use. I'm just going to open this up and I'm just going to put this on here just to catch the fluid because it's all going to go squirting into this bottle. I'm going to try to pull this caliper in. I'm just going to stick it in this hole and put it right around the front of the pad. Try to pull on it. And that don't want to move. Now I'm going to get in between this brake pad and this caliper piston, and I'm going to pull that in nice and slow. And that actually pulls in. That seems to work. I got a good caliper piston and bad caliper pins. Close this bleeder back off. Then we'll go on to the other side. Wow, that brake fluid looks like coffee. Probably never been done. Obviously that caliper's not moving either. And that caliper piston pulls in really nice. See how I did that? See? Now the reason why I'm loosening up the bleeders too is because I'm going to do a brake flush anyways, so when I pull this caliper piston in, I'm getting as much fluid out of the system as I can, and it's not going to go back up into the reservoir. Now I'm on to the driver's side front. This one doesn't have a cap on it. Sometimes the holes get all plugged up in them. Try to open this one up. It opened. It's amazing. It's dripping. More amazing. Same deal. I'll try to pull this one in. Ooh, this is all going in real nice. It's nice and smooth. So that's a worker. That's all good. Don't have to mess with this caliper much. When I put this pry bar in between the piston and pull it out, the only thing I got to make sure of is I just got to be careful that I don't damage the dust boot. That's a good caliper too. So there it is. I got to do a slide repair on the rear or replace the rear calipers and do a brake flush in all the pads and rotors. Now on these calipers, I don't know why they would do such a thing, but I can't get a 14mm socket on here or a box end wrench. And an open end wrench will probably just strip this out. And I can't turn it off anyways unless I torch this. And you got to get it up to about 500 degrees just to get this pin to turn, or it's going to snap right off in this caliper support bracket. One way you can get these off is by taking the bottom slide pin out and then turning the caliper up and pushing it out. But I can't do that either because both of them are wrecked. So I'm just going to take the caliper off. And a lot of times too, you can get a pry bar in here and you can bend this line, this hose, just enough to get a socket in there, but that's kind of a stupid idea too, so I'm not going to do it. I got a 17mm wrench here. I'm going to loosen this line up just a little bit just to get it loose so I can take it off pretty easy. And I'm going to do what everybody that took too many brake classes tell me not to do and pinch this line off. I'm just going to do it really light. I'm not going to get real crazy with it. Just enough so I can feel that it's pinched all the way. It's not going to hurt this line at all. It's just really light pressure. And I pretty much have to do this too because I'm going to service this caliper, and if this line's open, it's just going to drip all the fluid out, and I'm going to lose all my fluid by the time I'm done fixing these calipers. I have two 14 millimeters on this caliper support bracket. I'm probably going to lose a little brake fluid, so I put a drain pan on the floor. I'm going to take this caliper off. It's not a banjo bolt on here, so I got to unscrew the caliper like this. Put this stuff on a vise and get these pads out of here. Oh, nice. The pad material just came right off of the brake pad, and it's uneven. And normally when they're uneven like that, that's telling me that one of these caliper slide pins might just kind of work. And it's probably this one, because the thicker side was on that side. Okay, I'm going to put this in a vise, clamp the support bracket down. I'm just going to hit this with a hammer and see if I can get these to move. Yeah, and get brake fluid squirting all over me out of this hole. Yeah, this one moves. And this one don't. Since this one moves, I can probably take the pin out without it breaking. I'm just going to put an impact on it with a 14 millimeter. Yeah, come right out. Kind of. These boots must really suck. They don't really work very good. Oh yeah, this pin's stuck really nice. So I'm going to break out the MAP gas, and I'm going to get this caliper support bracket up to about 500 degrees. And while I do that, I'm going to pull on this, and I should get it to move. I got it to move a little bit. Whoa. It blew right out. No, that stinks. Don't want to breathe that. Now I can get this pin out. Ow. There, now I don't have to buy a caliper. I don't have to buy a caliper support bracket. Now the biggest reason why these pins get like this is because there's all kinds of rust on the sealing surface for the boot. And the sealing surface for the pin, which is right here, this pin actually looks kind of decent. And the other one does not. It's all rusted up. So I'm just gonna wire wheel all of this nice and clean so it seals really nice. The brake pads were stuck too, and that's because there's a bunch of rust on these spots right here, so I'm gonna wire wheel them. Normally I hit them with a chipping hammer and a file, but I think I can wire wheel it off. Yeah, the rust on here is way too thick, but these look really nice now. Those should be fine. Now I got a 25/64 drill bit. It's just a little bit smaller than this hole, which is what I want. I don't want to drill the hole out. I'm just going to use this to clean it, so I'm going to use it like a reamer, just to get all the rust and the crud out of here. Get all of that out of there. Got a little nylon brush here that seems to be the right size I can use for this. Little brake cleaner. Now I got some nice holes again. Got a really rough file. I'm going to try to clean this down to bare metal. I use silicone paste for these caliper slides. Well, in this case, I got some Sil Glide now. I'm moving up in the world. I got a little rubber boot on this one pin. I'm going to put that back on. It really doesn't matter what hole this goes in either. It just keeps it from rattling and making noise. It's like an anti-rattle thing. Make sure these are good and lubed. Then these dust boots, I cleaned the sealing surface off as best as I could on these. I want to put a little bit of lubricant on the dust boots too, just because it helps them seal. And there, I got a good caliper slide again. That one's ready to go. Now I can deal with the rest of this caliper. It's got some really thick rust on it, on this piston and on this contact surface. You want to get all the rust off and all the high spots off of it, because any kind of rusty high spots will screw with your pedal height. If you want a really nice pedal, you got to get all of this off and make sure it's all nice and flat. I want to make sure I don't run the file into any of that rubber dust boot either. That's all good enough. Good enough stuff. Well, I got to get this rusty old rotor off. I'm just going to try to bust this off and don't want to touch them studs. Got some emergency brakes back here that nobody ever uses, and I would recommend the guy never does. Got to make sure there's no big amounts of rust scale on here. It'll make it feel like the rotor's warped. Got a little bit of oil on these to keep them from rusting. And I just got to make sure there's no fuzz stuck on here from the rag. Any bit of fuzzle can get it to make noise. A little rubber plug to use for the adjusters on the emergency brake. Stab that in the hole. Make sure it's not hitting this crusty, rusty old backing plate that's ready to fall right off. And yeah, it's about a crusty piece of nothing. Nice. Now I can put my caliper support bracket back on. These get tightened to 74 foot-pounds. I have a couple of abutment clips. I can put these back on. And with the rear brake pad, I got one of these. It's a wear indicator. It's supposed to squeak and make noise when the brake pad gets down far enough. When you're going forward, the tire's rolling like this, so the bottom of the rotor is going to be hitting the brake pad first. So I want to put this on the bottom of the pad, and it goes on like this. I want to make sure that pad slides really nice. If it doesn't, I did something wrong and I need to take it all back apart. I'm going to make sure that hole in there is nice and clean and there's no big chunks of rust in there. I'm going to screw this thing back on. I have some disc brake quiet. Usually there's little packets of this in your brake pads with your abutment clips. I'm just going to put some on the contact surfaces of the piston, and then where the pad touches the caliper on this side. And that's all I'm going to need. I can snap this other brake pad on here. There's little holes that it's got to go in, so I want to make sure they're all the way in the holes. Take my pins back out. Take my vice grip off. Ah, I guess I made a mistake. I gotta put this caliper support bracket on with the caliper and then screw this on, so I gotta take all this back off. Evidently you gotta torque this caliper bolt before you put the line on. So I might as well I'm gonna put it back on my vise and I'm gonna torque these down, and then these caliper slide pins are supposed to be 25 foot-pounds. Oh, I gotta squirrel this brake pad in here somehow. It's in there. Okay, let's try this again. Chrysler European Engineering, take 2. Probably did all that to save $2 to use a nut instead of a banjo bolt. I just need to make sure this slides really nice and these pads move really good. Well, the one pad, the other one's stationary. I'm going to tighten this line down to about, I'm going to guess and just say 16 foot-pounds or so. There, do the same to the other side. Before I do the other 3 brakes, I'm going to start gravity bleeding this. I'm going to take my brake bleeder. I got a really little hose for it. I'm just going to suck out as much of this fluid as I can. I don't think I'm going to be able to get much out of here because I can't get the hose back in the, I don't know, they did a number with this reservoir, so I can't empty it all out. I can't even empty half of it out. More genius European engineering, I guess. Then I'm gonna do my brake fluid bottle in the reservoir trick. It should stay in there and it will not leak. I'm gonna crack this bleeder screw open. And it'll all start drilling out really good, and I'm just gonna put a line on here and drip everything down into this pan. And I'm just gonna let this corner go while I do the brake job to the other 3 corners, and then when that fluid's clear, then I'll go to the other side. Looks like clean, clear fluid to me. Close this line off. I'm just gonna do the same to the other side. I got the passenger side put together and I'm bleeding it. And all I gotta do when I put this back together is just mash on the brake pedal and get the caliper piston to go in and make sure that these don't leak. On with the passenger front. This should be pretty straightforward. These pins are a 14 millimeters. They look nice and lubed. The sealing surface looks clean. This caliper piston boot didn't pull in right. It's kind of sticking out from the piston a little bit there. That's one thing you got to be careful of when you're pulling these pistons in with a screwdriver. You can wreck those real easy. You're going to get in here with a nice blunt piece of plastic and try to push this back in here, and it's pretty freaking lame. I don't know. I think these people need a little more practice making caliper boots or something. I don't know. We'll try a feeler gauge. I got the back side of like a 32 thousandths inch feeler gauge. That won't even go in there. Jesus, people have been making caliper boots for how many years and they can't even, I don't know, there's no air in the thing. A lot of times you just burp them and then they fall into place. You just get something dull back here to kind of get the seal away from the piston to get the air out of it, but all the air's out of it and it's not sitting in there right. I guess I'm going to have to just leave it like that. More goofy European Chrysler product stuff. Okay, let's get away from that. 18 millimeter on the caliper support brackets. Give these a lovely whack with a BFH. There's spots for screws in here, but there's no screws in it. I don't think that even came with this car. I'm going to descale this with a descaler. Same deal. Here's with the rear. Same thing here. They give you a wear indicator for this one too that you got to put on yourself. Try not to give myself stitches on these abutment clips. Make sure these pads move, and they don't. This one's stuck. Doesn't want to move. So normally when they don't move, it's because you don't get them clean enough, but it's all clean behind there. There's no big rust spots or anything, so I'm just going to sand this down a little bit. Just knock a little bit of metal off. And hopefully it'll move now. Oh yeah, real nice and buttery now. Moves just like it should. This one's stuck too. I got to take a little bit off of it. Doesn't take much. You don't want to take too much off either, or the pad will rattle back and forth. It's just a little bit loose. It shouldn't make noise though. If they move back and forth too much, they'll rattle and make noise when you're going over bumps and stuff. Well, this should go on like normal stuff. The good book says these bolts get torqued to 125 foot-pounds. I can't believe that. It's hard to believe a lot of stuff that comes out of Chrysler's mouth. Need to get tightened to 25 foot-pounds, just like the rear. Make sure all this stuff moves really nice, brake pads and everything. I got both of the rears gravity bled. Now I'm going to gravity bleed this side until it's nice and clear, clean fluid. And while this one's bleeding, I'm going to put the pads and rotors on the other side. Well, that's nice and clean. It actually gravity bled out really fast. Torque bleeder screws too. I don't know. Look it up. Just like those rear brake lines. I don't know. Look it up. In fact, look up all the torque specs. Don't believe me. Now I'm just going to nice and quickly take this bottle off. Try not to make a mess. So I'm just going to pump up the pedal and the level should get down to the full mark. So I pumped the pedal and I held the pedal down really hard for about 10 or 15 seconds to make sure it didn't bleed down, to make sure none of my bleeder screws and lines are leaking. And the level's right here, which is just perfect. So I can put the cap back on it. Now I'm going to put some tires on it, torque the lug nuts. They say 90 foot-pounds and 100 foot-pounds, whatever. And I'm going to take it for a drive and make sure that ABS works right. It should be braking really good now. I'm going to bed the pads in. You just cruise at about 30 miles an hour and come to a really slow stop a couple of times and then go on the freeway and hit the brakes a few times, and they should be bedded in, and this thing should work fine. If it doesn't, I'll make a longer video. I think it's a job. Okay, bye. This annoying rattle can still got some ABS activation going on. Once in a while I hit the brakes and I can hear it. This guy's got rattling cans and garbage all over his car. I don't know how people can drive a car like this. It'd completely drive me nuts having all this stuff rattling around in this car. There, you hear that? I don't mean the cans and all the bags and all the crazy stuff either. I mean, there it goes. I'm getting an ABS activation out of this at really slow speeds. It's not as bad as it was. And it's stuff in his mirror too. Man, how freaking annoying can you be? There it is again. I got ABS noises. I still got to try to figure this thing out. The brakes work a lot better, that's for sure. Sounds like a fart. Sounds like a Chrysler farting. And what the heck is this? I actually get to drive around people's cars and wonder what all of this floaty stuff in a jar and oh my God, people gotta stop doing this to me.